Tell me what you see.
I look at you and tell you what I feel. Look at me and tell me what you see. I look at you and tell you.
What's up, everybody? Emperor John Kill 3D Gaming here, and with Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power had released about a couple weeks ago. We're now on episode 4. I think it's the right time for me to jump in and talk about one of the most, I wouldn't say polarizing, but the most unique RPGs based in the Lord of the Rings world, more so based around the Jackson films. This is Lord of the Rings, The Third Age. Now, we all know we have Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King game, its handheld ports, even 2 video games based solely on the book adaptations, The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. This game takes the entire trilogy and puts you into an original story that is set during the events of the trilogy. You play as a Gondorian knight named Barethor, and Barethor is on a quest to unite with Boromir, but due to some twists and turns, Barethor is not the guy we think he is, and all the events get revealed later. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still the Barethor character, you know, he's a Gondorian knight and everything, but as to the reasons why he is on this quest, it is very unique and very surprising. You take on your own fellowship of characters. You know, you have two, how do I say this in this game? You got two. Damn, it's hard to describe the classes, because I wish more of them were fucking memorable. Okay, even Barethor, the character we play with, we only play with him because he's the antagonist. I wish there was more to him. The same with his love interest Idriel and Morrowind. I mean, hell, I could play the whole game as fucking Elagast because Elagast has the most charm, him and the dwarf Hadhod. But despite that, everything else in the game is fucking awesome. And let me explain why. This game draws heavy, and I mean heavy inspiration from Final Fantasy X. And you know what? That's not a bad thing, because Final Fantasy X is one of my favorite Final Fantasy games, if not the favorite Final Fantasy game. But the Third Age implements a lot of its systems and uniqueness, which is actually what carries the game. Despite you get these weird odd-on flashes from the films, you know, kind of in an incoherent manner, but that's how all the Lord of the Rings games based on the Jacksonverse were. They would show you clips if you were in that area or if you were around that scenario set in the film. They're going to show you clips to help move you along. And if you know the movie, which I know a lot of you do, it's easy to understand. You go to many of the locations that we've seen in the films. Hell, even areas that we didn't see from the films that expand. Like the Mines of Moria is fucking massive. It's a massive level compared to how we've seen it in the films. Now, what makes this different from the other RPGs that I have ever played is it's very straightforward. There's no open world per se. You are set on a direct path. Yes, you can deviate to find items, but there's no stores, no one else to interact with. You just go along the journey, which kind of makes sense. I mean, you're not really going to be shopping into towns during the times of war. You're going to be constantly on the move. So where you obtain all your items is finding them throughout the world or defeating enemies. And this is what I like about the game, how it implements the combat system. Yes, it draws from Final Fantasy X. You know, it's turn-based combat. But every character is unique. Every character has abilities and skills tailored to the race they are. Idriel, the elf, she has elven powers that can be very useful in battle. She can heal. She can revive you. You know, Barethor, he's a strong, heavy type fighter. Even though he starts off average, you can really bust his skill set. The same with Hadhod, and the same with Elagast. The only characters who I say are very underpowered is Eoden and Morrowind, the 2 Rohirrim characters that you meet when you get to the Rohan sections of the game. And then every Everything in this game holds a purpose, which is also very helpful. Every item is valuable. Every item is precious to you, no pun intended. You have a perfect system meter, which fills up as the fight progresses, and you can unleash devastating attacks against your enemies. There's a lot to this game that a lot of people might have overlooked, or a lot of people really didn't think about at the time. See, me, I'm going to tell you the dead-ass truth. The first time I played the Third Age, I was about 11, 12 years old. I would say I'm about 12 years old. And Final Fantasy X was also my first RPG. So I'll tell you what, this was my second ever RPG. And since it played just like Final Fantasy X, I felt at home with it. But I'll tell you what, they didn't have to carry everything from Final Fantasy X, especially sections of difficulty spike. Boy, let me fucking tell you. Actually, let me tell you guys a tall tale when I was a kid. I never beat this game fairly back in the day. I will be honest with you right fucking now. I did not beat this game fairly. I used a Game Shark at the time. Okay? And if you're wondering, the only way I can get these footages is, yes, I have to run the PS2 version on my cousin's computer just to be able to screen capture. But if you see different button prompts, it's because I'm using a controller that feels more appropriate. And be surprised, I'm actually using the Gamecube controller. And the Gamecube controller on a PS2 game, for some reason, reminds me of the time where you could plug in a Genesis controller to play on the fucking Atari. So if you see in different button prompts, it's because I'm testing out different controllers. I forgot to mention that at the beginning or give you that side note. But this game looked great for the time, and I'm going to tell you why. Anyone who's a Lord of the Rings or a gaming fan or a Lord of the Rings gamer should know that this game uses a lot of assets that were already developed from the previous EA Lord of the Rings games. The only things that are original are your main characters, your main heroes that you play as. But everything else comes straight from those games. From basically the same graphic design of the levels to the same graphical design of the enemies. It's just now everything is turn-based. And I could tell you what, you guys, I recommend highly, if you're a person just going to get into this game for the first time, or never knew it existed or doubted it at first, I'm going to give you some veteran advice. Always farm the new areas that you go on in. From the lands of Aragion, to Mordor, to Rohan, to Helm's Deep, to Osgiliath, to Minas Tirith, and to Pelennor Fields. I forgot Amon Hen, the place from Fellowship of the Ring where Boromir died. I recommend when you go to a new area every single time, stay in that area for at least an hour. See, this game took me a little longer than normal. I was, thinking maybe 20 hours at best, because back then RPGs of this caliber weren't ultra long. And yes, please excuse the fucking mouse cursor because I also have a mouse plugged in. For some reason, when you play this game on the PC, you also need the mouse. You need to click the mouse to be able to skip cutscenes. Which is funny because you can't even skip cutscenes on the PS2 version or the GameCube. Like, you can't skip cutscenes on the console versions, but that's why I give playing it on the computer, if you're trying to emulate the PS2 version and you could use different controllers, for some reason, it really makes the game unique when you play with different controllers to a version of the game. See, like, for example, you're seeing how the Balrog in this scene is fucking toasted everybody. That's why I suggest farming. Because you will come across son of a bitches like that. And, for my best advice, form your team based around Berethor, Idriel, Elegost, and Hadhard the Dwarf. Why? Let me explain to you what these guys can do, especially if you can break some of their abilities that they get throughout the game. Now, Idriel, she has a power called Aura of the Valar, the gift of Galadriel, and Power of the Valar, which also resurrects allies. Aura of the Valar essentially means that Idriel can place an ability. Oh, make sure you also get Frenzy. There's an ability called Frenzy that allows you to take 2 turns. With her, if you use Aura of the Valar on 2 of your characters, she doesn't get a turn for 2 turns, but use Aura of the Valor on herself and use it on any other of your teammates. You could take a couple bit of damage and then do it again. Make sure your whole team has Aura of the Valor on. Why? Because if you give them all Aura of the Valor, they will essentially never die. That's right. They will essentially never die. With Aura of the Valor, if you go down, you instantly get back up full HP, full attack points, and you instantly get a turn. So let's say if your entire team was wiped instantly, and you have Aura of the Valor after that on, boom, you can all get up, take your turn, and redo it again. So essentially, you will never die in combat. Only for a few sections will I say it's some bullshit that happens, because in this game, there are just a multitude of difficulty spikes that just happen when you don't expect it. And one of those, actually not one of those, fuck that, 2 of those places, you will deal with it the worst. That is Helm's Deep, and that is the Pelennor Field. Okay? When you get to Rohan, the game is going to smack you in the fucking face if you weren't ready. And that's something the game does not even allude to how difficult it's going to be. There's no way to tell how strong the enemies are, or in most RPGs, you know the area you go in is going to be a hassle. Here, you will not know if it's a hassle or not. You're just going to go in thinking you're all hot shit and possibly get smacked. And Lord knows the amount of times I got smacked, because that ties in to my story as a kid. I did very well playing the game. You know, I didn't think to stay in the same area, but I would go around and collect items and collect different things to help basically move me along. But then when I got to Helm's Deep, I was so underpowered and underprepared. You can't get by the Great Wall level. I'm just going to be real. You will not be able to get by the Great Wall level. The only way I did it was, yes, I used a Game Shark at the time and I cheated. But I always told myself that one day I would go back and beat it fairly. And before I even did this review, I took a whole week and a weekend off to basically beat this game. That was 20. I beat the game within 26 hours and 30 minutes. Took me not a little longer than I thought, but that's because I chose to farm. And that was because I chose to go through. You can even revisit regions. That's actually the good thing. This is another implementation from Final Fantasy X. If you go to the save point, and let's say your team wiped and you have one character. In Final Fantasy X, when you hit the save point, it restores your health, and it restores all your, in that game, which would be magic points, MP. In this game, it restores your health and all your action points. And that is a good thing, because if you're farming in that area, you go back, you farm a little bit, run to the save point. Farm a little bit, run to the save point. It does get tedious, but for the benefit for your team, it is worth the grind. It is worth it, because especially when you get to Helm's Deep, look, all I gotta say is, God be with everybody when you get to this stage. All the Urukai take more turns than they should, especially when they breach the fucking wall and you have to defend the Hornburg, which is basically defending the gate that Aragorn and Gimli had to jump in and try to help everybody basically hold off. Here, you're fighting nothing but Urukai Berserkers, Trolls, and Urukai Sorcerer support types. Do you understand the pain in the ass that is? Because every time an Urukai hits you, they have an attack that drains your health and instantly stuns you. So basically, for a good few turns, you are going to be caught in a stun lock. That's what I fucking hate. A stun lock. So, what do? I used an item that basically allows you to use all your abilities without wasting your AP. And another item, which every turn you gain AP and you gain health. Then, on top of me using Idriel's Aura of the Valor, I recommend using Talion's leadership abilities, because his leadership abilities could heighten the chances of you not getting hit, heighten the chances that you never miss and that the enemies can't counterattack. Because that is one of the key problems you will have with the enemies. At the rate that they can counterattack and the amount of turns they are given. I mean, literally, one time during Helm's Deep, the moment the thing starts, I only got one turn, and every enemy just kept attacking me and attacking. And I wasn't stunned. I didn't use Frenzy. I didn't use none of the abilities that could lock me into place. All the enemies just kept getting turn after turn after turn after turn until I was dead. I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Turn after turn, those fuckers just straight up annihilated me. And I didn't even get a turn. So, of course, I had to cheat the fucking game, go back and farm, and then when I got my turn, used Idriel's abilities. I also recommend using Elagos's abilities. Elagos is another character you may not have to use Aura of the Valor on, but I recommend you do. But you won't have to worry about healing him. He has an attack that drains the health of enemies that he hits, which is a good thing. He has arrow flurries. That's what I'm saying. This whole game probably would have been a lot better if Elagos was the main antagonist, because he's got a lot more personality. Hell, the whole game could have been him and Hadhod, because it's clear him and Hadhod had a friendship. They went on adventures. They had history in the game. Then when you get after Helm's Deep, if you could get through that fucking headache, the game just then goes balls to the wall crazy in the Return of the King section. You start from fucking Osgiliath to Minas Tirith to the Pelennor Field. This part of the game gives you barely, and I mean barely, any fucking stops. You are on go the whole time. It's like the moment that this section starts, you need to be next to those save points and stick by them. Like, quite literally, stay by the health areas. Because the enemies here, when it comes to the Nazgul and some of the orcs, especially when you get to oh my god, I'll get to Pelennor Fields in a second. But Osgiliath is going to be the first thing that tells you, oh, you thought Helm's Deep was a bitch, huh? Well, we got something for you coming up. How is it that the final boss in this game, which is the literal Eye of Sauron, that you somehow get to the top of Barad-dûr to fight, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a cool boss battle, so it basically, I don't care if it doesn't make sense or not, it's a badass game. So Osgiliath is going to let you know you can get through Minas Tirith pretty effectively. It's the Witch King that's going to give you a problem, because this is where you constantly start fighting the Nazgul. And the Nazgul's abilities are fucking broken. I mean fucking busted. These guys can pull off AP like it's no tomorrow, hit you with attacks that hit harder than a It's like, imagine getting hit by the Balrog in a smaller form. That's basically how hard they can hit you. You need to take a target, especially in one section when you have Idriel and Talion. Not Talion. What the fuck? This ain't Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War. What the fuck am I saying? Talion. Barad-dûr. You take Barad-dûr, have one of them both attack each other's targets. Especially if you have Barad-dûr and one of the swords, one of the most powerful swords you can find in the game, every time you hit an enemy or get a counterattack, it will instantly restore your health and your AP, which is a cool fucking sword. I mean, Jesus. You could clearly see I have him decked out in Second Age Númenórean armor, and I have Idriel fucking decked out in Second Age Elven armor. That's the funny thing. The items in this game, though useful, every item is only useful for certain sections. You're going to instantly be swapping out for the better gear the moment you get it. And if I wish there was a way that you could have got rid of items that you didn't need. Like, okay, if you don't have normal shops, that's fine. But why don't you have the save point be a place where you can just break your items down and use them to craft items that you already need, like healing items, AP items, items that allow you to continue the fight. But if that was the case, it wouldn't have the difficulty that it has. So overall, with this game, I really do like this game. I mean, the Third Age was an unexpected surprise. Now, how would I play it if if I was you, I do have the original hardware, but like I said, to do footage, I'm using it on my cousin's gaming PC and recording off of his capture card. A capture card specifically designed for the older systems, but what he taught me was an interesting trick. He's the one who obviously set it up for me. He uses both a combination of the controllers and the mouse and keyboard. So for some reason, when we was trying to use the PS2 controller for this game, which should have been the original way I was trying to play it, it's the PS2 version, but with the Gamecube layout. I guess in a way it helps a little bit. And if you can see this right here, this is a little bit of reference to Lord of the Rings. Kinda. I don't know why my cousin just told me to throw this in there. He said that would help. That screen. It's some lines in the game where you can clearly see they drew inspiration from or meanings. But I used a combination of the mouse and keyboard and the GameCube controller. And you know what? It made everything run a little bit more smoothly. Something about the GameCube controller, it was easier to use the small D-pad to get to where everything I needed. Easily hit the B button to go back, and easily hit the big green A button to fucking hit the stuff that I needed to hit. You know, the PlayStation controller, the PS2 controller, all the buttons, even though they work well, you know, PS2 controller was great for its time. Something about the GameCube controller with certain games just make it feel better, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But that's how I played it. But if you are somebody who's into original hardware, I would recommend getting it for the hardware it came out of. Third Age came out on a multitude of platforms. It came out for the PC, came out for the GameCube, came out for the PS2. I believe it came out on the original Xbox as well. It also came out on the GBA. So there's plenty of different ways for you to play it. It just depends where do you want to play it, or if you have the original hardware, is it worth going out? I purchased my copy, my physical copy of the game, for about $10. And you know what? $10 was worth it. It was worth going back, because especially when I was a kid and it was EB Games before it became GameStop, back then you would always go in and just trade in your old games you instantly beat and got newer ones. If I remember correctly, I got this game, you know, in new condition, even though it was already out and it already had some time for them to reduce the price. I got the brand new disc copy back then, I remember, for $25. And bringing it home, I assumed, okay, this is going to be another extension to the Return of the King and the Two Towers game. I assumed it was going to be a third-person action style beat 'em up. And boy, was I entirely wrong. This was a huge surprise, and it stuck with me all these years. This game really did stick with me. I have my ups and I have my downs with it. It has more ups than it has downs. The downs are nitpicks or just basically typical bullshit within video games, like artificial difficulty, or random shit happening, like the enemies instantly killing you, even though you know goddamn well they shouldn't have been able to. It's just got those typical old school RPG, or not, I wouldn't say old school, but pain in the ass RPG tropes. But I think what makes it worth it is that in certain sections, you get to have characters from the films be on your team. And Jesus Christ, these characters are so fucking overpowered. Especially if you have them during a boss battle. If you have one of these main characters during a boss battle, you're guaranteed to fucking win. You are guaranteed to win. There's just certain bosses that you will not have a hero character, but by that time, you would be more powerful enough to be able to take him down. So, it also feels weird in the context of Lord of the Rings that Eowyn, and what's funny is a little detail in this game is that Eowyn doesn't defeat the Witch King. You do. And I get that. I get that they wanted to make all these older games, not older games, but they wanted these games to make you feel like you're the one that took down the enemy. But it does kind of smack both the film and the concept in the story to the side when it's, you know, when the Witch King says that no man can defeat me and all that crazy shit. But I'm not mad at it. Because at the end of the day, in my eyes, cool will always trump canon. So if something's cool, and I mean badass fucking cool, I could give a fuck if the context makes any sense. Okay? Throughout the whole game, the Nazgul will piss you off. So when you get to that part where you get to whoop their ass, you can't say it don't feel good. I like Lord of the Rings games that lets me whip the Nazgul's ass. I really do. I like to tear their asses up. The only thing I don't like dealing with is fucking Uruk-hai. Uruk-hai get on my goddamn nerves. In every video game, Uruk-hai always got on my fucking nerves. Okay, maybe there's one other thing that gets on my nerves about this game. There is some audio glitches. And that is even when my cousin was able to get it run on the PC. This game, in certain sections, has audio glitches. Like when you level up and the bar hits maximum, you hear like a lightning sound effect that says you've leveled up, and then you hear the class little dun dun dun, like, you know, the fellowship theme. But here, sometimes the sound effect won't even play. The sound effects for certain attacks don't come through. You'll see the attack, you'll see it happen, but you'll hear the sound effect pop in like 5 to 10 seconds after. And it only happens at certain sections. It's not every single time. I've had it happen maybe twice in Moria, once in Osgiliath, and maybe once in the Pelennor Field. But that's 4 times separated by a good amount of hours in between. So, with that being said, Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, I think for anyone who's a Lord of the Rings fan, or if you're an RPG fan, you'll enjoy the experience. This would be an experience that I recommend you go through however way you can access the game, or however you can. Like I said, if you got original hardware and you can get it running, hey, go for it. If you can emulate it or get it on the PC, go for it. If you want to play its unremarkable GBA version, hey, that's on you. Go for it. Gamecube or the Xbox, find a way. I wish this game could benefit from a remaster. It actually really could, if they would. But this is EA. EA's not going to do anything that makes sense. They're going to just do shit that doesn't make sense. So that was Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. Damn, one of my longest classic reviews, but I did have a lot to say about this game. You know, I enjoy it still to this day, despite its flubs, and I might just go back and play it again on New Game Plus. Anyway, that's Emperor John Kill 3D Gaming. Be sure to like, subscribe, favorite, and I'll see you all in the next video.